Thank you, Janet, and thank you, Westchester Children's Association. Thanks to all of you for coming out this morning. Thanks especially to the municipal elected officials who are here, for whom I work. So it's great to be here, and thanks ever so much for releasing me, liberating me for the day from the miasmic swamps of Washington, D.C. Looking forward to what I hope is a conversation more than simply a presentation about disconnected youth. I want to give you a flavor of what we've been thinking about and working on with cities around the country for the past several years. First, just to let you know where it is I work, Janet correctly described it as a mouthful. 10 years ago, Mayor Thomas Menino of Boston said there needs to be one place in Washington, D.C., and one of the national associations where municipal leaders can come for assistance on children, youth, and family policy. And that idea gave rise to our institute. And we've been fortunate to receive funding over those 10 years from a couple of dozen national foundations who want to see us work on issues ranging from early childhood, family economic success, youth development, improvements in education and after school, and disconnected youth and gang reduction. So National League of Cities is the oldest and largest membership association. It welcomes all cities and towns as members and relates to state municipal leagues that you may have come across in your travels in Albany. So we'd love to be a resource not only to municipal officials, but also to anyone working in the broad children and youth family policy field. So today, the ground I'm hoping to cover, I was somewhat daunted by the notion that this was a lecture. I've never actually been asked to give a lecture. Maybe, so I'm thinking of it as a talk or remarks. I like Janet's term. But I did want to give an organized outline for my quote-unquote lecture. So we'll cover some terms. We'll talk about the scale and key challenges that are involved with the disconnected youth population. After that grim news, we'll talk about how a youth development perspective, as usual, can help us see a way through to mobilize around this issue. I want to show you some examples of how cities have organized themselves to do better for disconnected youth, and lay out some options, since this is an organization that does great advocacy work, and taking a broad frame and my definition of advocacy. So I'll lay out some options that Westchester might want to pursue collectively. So Janet provided a big help in defining the terms that are our focus of discussion here today when we're talking about disconnected youth. First and foremost, we're thinking about older youth, ages 16 to 24, who are neither in school nor working. That's the fundamental definition that we're looking at. And the idea is, if they're not well connected to their roles as citizens and parents and educated people and workers, if they're not well connected to those roles by the time they're 25, it's really difficult to establish that connection later. So that's the motivation for paying attention to this range of years, this period of years, and to say, what can we do to strongly connect these young people as they're becoming adults to the roles that we want everyone to be able to play in society. So depending on where you're coming from, this does include young people who have dropped out of school, young people who have dropped out of college, the unemployed young people, transitioning foster youth, young people who have had experience in the juvenile or adult criminal justice system, as well as pregnant and parenting teens. Some people prefer the terminology of vulnerable youth or youth in transition. You'll hear about one city that uses the term transition age youth. All of those are very suitable options. If disconnected is not working for you, one reason it works for me is that as we talk in a minute about cross-system collaboration, disconnected serves as a reminder that yes, the young people are not connected as we would want, but it's also a problem that adults are literally disconnected, and these systems that adults run are not well enough connected. So disconnected becomes a kind of a drumbeat in the background here. Sometimes when we're thinking about the younger end of the spectrum of disconnected youth, some people have been paying a lot of attention to struggling students, and as folks have looked at what's going on in America's high schools today and what are some of the preconditions that are leading to high dropout rates, they're finding large numbers of young people who are so-called underage, overage, and undercredited. So they fall behind in credits. They're 16, 17 years old and still more or less in 9th grade. And the chance that those young people can make up the credits they need to get through to graduation, even in a 5 or 6 year time frame, the chances are very low. So let's talk about the scale of the challenge nationwide and here in Westchester County, thanks to the great data analysis work of WCA. So frighteningly, 1 in 6 young people in this age group are disconnected nationwide, neither in school nor working. So that's at least 4 million young people, maybe as many as 5 million. We'll have to do a more incisive analysis of the new census data coming out from last year. But so that's a big group of young people when you look at it nationwide. A couple of years ago, an organization called the Schuyler Center up in Albany took a look at disconnected youth in New York State and determined by this definition that there are 200,000 such young people here in this state. One of the big feeders into this disconnected youth population is that on average across the US, 3 in 10 young people do not graduate high school on time. Now, tiny numbers of them graduate a year or two beyond the expected 4 years, but that's one of the biggest feeders. Then there are these overlapping subpopulations of juvenile justice youth, transitioning foster youth, etc., that all kind of cross over within the disconnected youth population. So what are the implications? Let me go back and talk about Westchester first. So to pull a few numbers off of the fact sheet that WCA provided for you. So it looks as though the total number of young people who are 16 to 19 and neither in school nor working is right around 2,800. We'll have to take a closer look at the numbers going forward to say what about the 20 to 24-year-olds. So maybe you could double this number, or roughly double this number, somewhere around 5,500, 6,000 such young people in Westchester County. About 700 dropouts per year being added to the pool of disconnected youth. Against the total school population, it looks like about 2,800 suspensions a year. 6.5% of students, 1 in 13 students gets suspended every year. I was a little surprised by that. And 35 young people officially aging out of foster care, larger numbers who are between 18 and 21 and should be taking steps to prepare for the formal transition from foster care. So you see, as you might expect in a county such as Westchester, maybe the overall numbers are not as large as they would be in some other places, but still still significant. We're talking about 5,000 or 6,000 disconnected youth in the county. I'm going to go on to suggest that while that number is large to begin with, it also may be manageable between and among the good service providers in the county, with a strong advocacy group, that you could develop a vision for Westchester County that sees you through to re-engaging those 6,000 young people. Why is it important to think about the, what are the implications of becoming disconnected? So again, we said overall, if you're not connected by 25, your chances of life success as an adult are greatly diminished, but some specifics apply depending on your status when you're in this transition age. So for instance, if you've had experience in the foster care system, you're quite a bit less likely to graduate high school, to experience developmental delays, to experience very high rates of unemployment and somewhat high rates of homelessness after emancipation. Young women who become parents as teenagers, 80% go on to become dependent on welfare. They need public assistance at some point. If you're homeless during this time period, then you're quite likely to have repeated grades and to fallen behind in school. If you get involved with the juvenile justice system, unsurprisingly, high rates of young people with learning differences and drug and alcohol problems. So, taken against this reality of the situation for disconnected youth, is to think about where the economy is going and the much talked about need for preparation for jobs of the 21st century. Some colleagues at Georgetown University have captured this, I think, in a helpful way very recently, and so that they're able to literally say that by 7 years from now, 60% of the jobs in the overall economy will require some kind of post-secondary credential. Now, that doesn't always mean a bachelor's degree, it doesn't even always mean an associate's degree, but across the range of occupations, the need for post-secondary credentials is rising and has changed substantially over the last the last several decades. The other, it might be an ongoing, a task going forward for Westchester to take a more incisive look at the economy here in this county and say what percentage of jobs require post-secondary credentials, and then what are we doing to propel young people and support young people through to those credentials. To talk a little bit about the immediate economic implications of falling behind in school, of becoming disconnected, we're looking at a situation where the difference in earnings, average earnings between a college graduate and a high school graduate is 100%. And it's even more dramatic. If you haven't finished high school, you only earn 1/3 as much as someone who completes a 4-year college degree. The long-term impact of these figures, that was a yearly average, and then if you look over a lifetime of working, as they did in the state of Massachusetts, you can see these huge differences in lifetime earnings for, if you compare young people who either didn't complete high school or just got a GED, or didn't complete high school or a GED, those who did complete high school. So very large difference of $346,000 across lifetime earnings, calculated a few years ago in Massachusetts. Now, you don't always have to look at this through an economic lens. It's also valuable to start thinking about just the human implications, the social implications. So we're talking about young people getting off track of what we all would commonly understand as the developmental course we want them to be on. So the process of disconnection, or the experience of disconnection, diverts careers, it diverts young people away from successful family formation, and flipping this and saying, well, what would we want instead of all this diversion away from the pathway that we desire, is to think about a goal such as connected by 21 and credentialed by 25. That's one goal that one of our colleague national organizations is proffering, and it is one that makes sense. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, that whereas the scale of the disconnected youth issue nationwide is huge, if you break it down and take it as you might want to do at a county level, there might be a certain manageability to it, challenging, possibly even daunting, but not impossible. You can imagine the 6,000 young people in Westchester together in one place and improving services, providing services and supports for them. Now, one other condition that's underlying this this situation we're finding ourselves in with disconnected youth is that over time, as policy has built up over time, there was this, it's almost kind of a free market view that young people, we're going to take care of young people up to age 18, and then they're on their own to make it as adults. Now, I have a 17-year-old daughter. I think she's mostly ready for college. I'm wondering what it's going to be like for her when she lands on a college campus next fall. And there are a lot of 18-year-olds out there who we might wonder, are they really ready for full independence? So it is important to kind of question the underlying assumptions of our policy architecture. It's also and to think about how we might change policy, to think about providing services and supports for longer. So in that vein, I wanted to say, again, with all those difficult statistics in mind, that we still know that there are a lot of good things about young adults. The same young people who fall in this disconnected youth population have several characteristics that apply to all young people at that age. They have a great capacity for hard work. They learn quickly, more quickly than I would, for instance. They're at a peak in their psychological development in terms of idealism, and they relate well to a team structure. They like, in general, they like positive group affiliation. They're resilient in that even if they have encountered problems with attachment to adults in the past, they still can develop positive attachments, develop skills, tap into optimism. And one example we have of how this gets channeled in kind of a programmatic vein is that since 1994, the 40,000 young people who have participated in youth build programs around the country, which develop low-income housing, have built 12,000 units of that low-income housing. So that's how you can channel all these wonderful developmental characteristics of young people at this age. Keeping youth development in mind, it's useful to say, what are we trying to achieve for these young people in this age group, and the disconnected youth in particular? We might want to embrace some broad strategic objectives, such as promoting educational attainment. If young people have fallen behind, then how do we reconnect them to education and move them forward to a credential? How do we develop workforce connections? How do we provide them work experience and a sense of how they can contribute and earn money in the current economy? And more generally, how can we support them with their other needs for food, shelter, again, positive group affiliation during this transition time. The Schuyler Center offered a useful construct when they said that we might want to think below the broad strategic objectives at the programmatic level. We want to rely on programs that are youth-centered and youth knowledge and care-centered. And last but not least, if you're looking for just a way to think about this, that what are the youth development needs of these young people, the Boys and Girls Clubs nationwide have this simple acronym, Buick, it's still okay to drive a Buick, I think, and belonging, usefulness, influence, and competence. Those are the things you want for any young person, and those are the things we can strive for. So, how did we get to cross-system collaboration as a key strategy for re-engaging disconnected youth? Well, when we're thinking about cities, small and large, around the country, we're struck by the notion that city leaders may have their hands on certain levers, they may have the administrative responsibility for some public functions, but neither cities, nor counties, nor states typically have full responsibilities for all of the public care and support systems. And then there's a dynamic community-based organization and faith-based organization sector as well out there. So no one in any of these systems or in any of these positions is able to manage everything him or herself. So thus, cross-system collaboration is required. And I'm trying to use collaboration in a specific way here. There's a British academic who came up with a useful definition that it's more than networking, it's more than coordinating, it's more than partnering. It's literally about exchanging information, altering the activities of the collaborators, sharing resources, and enhancing the capacity of other organizations to achieve a common purpose. Now, so that's the fancy definition. The practical definition that I came across in my work in California is that cross-system collaboration means putting the money on the table and taking your hands off. So whether it's in good budget times or bad budget times, such as now, what are the resources available to support disconnected youth in Westchester County? And sure, you want to analyze who's doing what now and to what degree of effectiveness, but the more important exercise is to say what's the total pool of resources and how can we deploy those resources most effectively to re-engage youth. So wanted to describe, so we've done this, had this experience of looking deeply at how a few cities are pursuing cross-system collaboration, and this is written up at greater length in some of our publications from the YEF Institute, which are available online. So I wanted to give examples from cities of varying size and where the motivations were somewhat different. So travel with me out west to Evanston, Wyoming, a town of population only 12,000. So maybe there are a number of towns about that size here in Westchester County. So there, disconnection was manifesting itself through high rates of teen suicide and substance abuse. So the systems came together, figured out how to bring in some new resources from, in that case, from the federal government, and established a youth drug and alcohol court to provide support, youth-to-youth support for young people who are experiencing these issues. And they really ramped up their out-of-school time programs for 6 to 12th graders. It's commonplace that out-of-school time programs focus on younger youth, but Evanston saw a need to really do a lot more after school for its older students, and it's been paying off. In in terms of results in Evanston. So then let's go over to the West Coast in San Francisco. The high rates of youth homelessness and California went through a phase of very high rates of assignment to foster care, so there are a lot of young people in the queue to become transitioning foster youth, some concerns that they were going to be spinning off into further homelessness. So former Mayor Gavin Newsom appointed a transition age youth task force made up of all the appropriate agency officials, advocates, and 1/3 youth members, actually. They came up with a set of recommendations, one of which was to establish a new city function. So there literally is a city office on transition age youth in San Francisco now. One of their strongest areas of programming has to do with supporting foster youth through the transition, through employment and other services. They also, an example of cross-system collaboration out there is that they're jointly competing workforce investment and community development block grant dollars. So they said these are the kinds of federal funds that are typically used most formally in silos to support young people through the transition. So how can we bring those funds together and provide better support and around a common set of goals? So then my adopted home city of Philadelphia, back in the 5th largest space after a lot of people had to leave Phoenix after they lost their homes, unfortunately. So now this is typical of the largest cities in the country with just a very large disconnected youth population, crazily high dropout rates, feeding that, very limited work opportunities for young people. So 2 or 3 things that Philadelphia has done in a cross-system manner. One is to bring the child welfare and workforce development systems together to establish a one-stop center for transitioning foster youth, where they could complete their education, get lots of counseling and support, and also employment and training direction. So that's the Achieving Independence Center in Philadelphia as a representation of their cross-system effort. They realized that there was a very large inflow of young people who, from secure detention centers, which are typically located well away from Philadelphia. So they're coming back to the city in desperate need of employment and education connections. So they bundled some funding from, again, workforce development and juvenile probation funding to literally establish centers that serve those young people and others who may have not had the proverbial brush with the law to provide employment and training supports. And Philadelphia has also, I'll mention this maybe a little bit more later when I talk specifically about dropout-related strategies, but Philadelphia really has decided to try to get on top of its historically high dropout rate, and it's launched a big multi-system effort called Project U-Turn. So that's dropout reduction is another major focus in Philadelphia. So as you would expect in a big city, they've had to have kind of multiple fronts that they're working on to try to reduce disconnection. And then to come to another city of a size maybe similar to some of those here in Westchester County, we've been working over the last couple of years with Manchester, Connecticut, which sits outside of Hartford. And they, like you, tried to use the Census American Community Survey data to understand what's the scope of the problem locally. They found several hundred disconnected youth in their city and high rates of youth homelessness. So they're still in process, but they're moving in the right direction. They've established a cross-system team that meets regularly and is they're using a method that's very common in Connecticut and may have spread to this part of New York State as well. They've really mapped out a design through using the results-based accountability analytical process to say exactly how do we want to improve this situation, what are our specific numerical goals, and how do we think we're going to get there. So as we generalize across what we've seen from these and other cities that are taking on cross-system collaboration as a strategy and really adopting that, we have a few areas that you might call findings. So the first is that municipal leaders are particularly well situated to play a number of roles. The mnemonic here is 5 C's and a P. So mayors, city council presidents, sitting elected officials, or perhaps their professional counterparts, city managers, city administrators of the world, can help conceptualize, can name and describe the issue and establish a vision of re-engagement of disconnected youth. They can typically do a good job of convening. It's hard to turn down an invitation from the mayor if he or she asks you to come to a meeting to work on an issue. They can play a commissioning role. They can say, we need more research on this, or we need to designate an intermediary body to take the lead on that aspect of the issue. They are good at crosswalking, so they can talk to county officials, school districts, foundations, business people. They sometimes have their hands on financial levers and can be co-financers of programs and initiatives. And then they can use the bully pulpit to promote the issue, promote what needs to be done. Now, as we've watched leaders across the country, we've seen that they don't all respond to the same motivations. But we tried to catalog what some of the different motivations are, and this might be useful for those of you in the advocacy business as you think about going to meet with a local mayor or county executive to say, what would bring you into this? So sometimes it's a clear public safety message. You know, either there's a perceived problem that disconnected youth are behind some public safety issues, or a demonstrable problem. Sometimes it's an equity issue that really works for municipal officials. Those of us who are lucky enough to raise our kids in kind of an upper middle class context recognize that many times our kids have access to second and third chances. Why not make second and third chances available to all? Some municipal officials, like Mayor Menino in Boston, this is his mantra. These are our kids. He just has an expansive vision of all the young people, and even though they may be disconnected in some ways, he still sees them as kind of part of the Boston family. Some mayors say that, for instance, other municipal leaders say that they know that their city or town will work best if there are strong families, a strong workforce, strong citizenry, and in order to get there, we have to pay attention to the disconnected young people. Sometimes it's an efficiency, or almost like an economist argument. Invest now and save later on public costs, or extend the reach of current programs. Spend money more efficiently if you come together around agreed goals. And last but not least, livability, the sense that the quality of life in a given place will be better if less young people are disconnected. So those are some possible arguments. Now, again, why cross-system collaboration as a strategy? Part of it is this volume of the need we've been describing and the sense that individual systems are not really set up to take on the problem as a whole, and that bridges over into the sense that it's a complex set of problems. No one agency or system can tackle this alone. We probably need to combine resources. And then, interestingly, we find that multiple agencies are working with a youth or their family anyway, so we might as well have a coordination and collaboration structure to make that more efficient. And finally, that cross-system collaboration literally produces better results. You might get one narrow result in the employment area, but have you really paid attention to both the employment and education needs at once, for instance? So now in some places, it's turned out to be very important, well, in all places actually, in order to make cross-system collaboration work, there has to be a clearly designated lead agency or intermediary organization. So sometimes we've seen public agencies play this role. Sometimes there's a nonprofit organization that's better situated to be the local intermediary. So there are some common roles for these lead agencies and intermediaries. One set of roles is to convene, coordinate, and connect, to provide the institutional knowledge and staffing, to measure progress against goals, and to keep the focus on systems and sustainability. Some of the people we've talked to around the country who do this say that unless you clearly designate somebody for this role, it's just no one's job to run the collaboration. Everybody else has other jobs and responsibilities. So it's a matter of defining that role for some person or some entity. It's especially important to have a lead agency when if you're trying to connect and collaborate between more than two systems. So say you're trying to do juvenile justice, employment and training, education all together. It's really important to have a clearly designated lead agency or intermediary. It doesn't mean that you have to create something new. There may be a body already well situated to take on this role. It's more a matter of naming it, making it official. So we've seen examples such as the Children's Initiative in San Diego, the role of the Parks Department in San Jose, which staffs the mayor's gang prevention task force there, and in Boston, where the police department has actually taken the lead around collaborative efforts to improve social services and public safety in certain neighborhoods. So the other key element of cross-system collaboration is that this is going to work best if you're working in if you commit to shared accountability, better use of data, probably increased data sharing between and among systems. So some practical examples that we've seen of this are a checklist, the regional risk and resiliency tool used by numerous police departments and social service providers in San Diego, where they're all they're all looking at the same young people at different times and saying, how are they doing in terms of protective factors and risk factors? That gets entered into a common database, so there's been agreement that they need a way of collaborating across systems there. In Boston, they've used GIS and related tools to analyze where public safety and human service issues are overlapping, and then deployed resources based on that. In Philadelphia, they've taken this approach of creating a so-called data warehouse located at a local university, where school district and city agencies are feeding in data that then can be analyzed. And then there's other layers of accountability too. When organizations come together and collaborate in a strong cross-system design, then they're committing to common numerical goals, and they're reporting regularly to each other on the contributions that they're making against those goals. So just wanted to say again why we think this is so important. What might you end up with if you pursue cross-system collaboration, if you really embrace it? So you might end up with things like common points of entry, intake, and assessment for young people. So they don't have to go through multiple assessments or multiple intake processes. There might be a means of common case management for young people whose situation crosses over one or more systems. There's stronger transition and aftercare planning. There's a best case, you can actually develop new capacity and reach more young people. you're more likely to tackle financial sustainability and leverage a broader array of funds. And on the education front, through collaboration, say, again, as between the workforce system and the education system, you might come up with a broader range of ways young people can get that first key high school level credential and then get propelled on toward post-secondary credentials. I did want to spend a few minutes talking about this construct that's been developing across the country because dropouts are such an important feeder into the problem of disconnection. So, and this is one thing we spent a lot of time on with at the National League of Cities, working with partner organizations and funders around the country. And really the goal that some municipalities, school districts, and others have come to is now known under the terminology of multiple pathways to college and career readiness. It used to be multiple pathways to high school graduation, but that's not really sufficient. You have to name the longer term goal you're pushing toward. So the definition of multiple pathways here is really a range of choices to meet the needs, learning styles of the full range of students, including those who have fallen away from school and need to be re-engaged in a new school setting. So this covers, in addition to those young people who have fallen away from school, it covers a wide range of settings and that work best for different groups of young people. So, you know, what can you do to create rapid credit accumulation options for young people who are overage and undercredited? What can you do to gear up career tech ed and tech prep options for young people for whom that works best? What about dual enrollment options between high school, local colleges? And are young people seeing career pathways? Do they get launched toward that by participation in career academies in their schools? So some cities, and this is another option out there for Westchester, some cities have taken on the job of describing, trying to put a graphic on what happens to young people from birth through to this goal of post-secondary credentialing. And Louisville is one of the leaders in this down in Kentucky, and they report that just having this way of depicting the steep decline over time between the full population of young people down to those who obtain degrees, it has been very helpful in reaching and engaging the business community, public sector leaders and others, and pointing out the need to really backfill and stop and pay attention to the lost points and try to, try to look forward to a future where that decline is not so steep, that only 1/4 of all young people are getting through to credentials. And typically, if you look at low-income young adults, the number is way less than 25%. It's more like 10% ever get through to a post-secondary credential today. So there's a lot of backfilling and supporting that has to go on in the education pipeline. And disconnected youth are among those who need attention. So what have we seen across the country in places where they're really grabbing on? What are all the components that are needed locally to tackle the dropout issue and push back on it? You certainly need early warning systems as early as 6th grade to start doing middle school differently so that young people are more prepared for high school. You need efforts to transform struggling high schools, the high schools that don't have strong promoting and graduating power. And of course, there's been a big focus around the country in high school redesign over the past few years. That's an ongoing push. You need to integrate education and other data systems so you're understanding all the factors that are at play for young people. You need a means to reflect, retool, and innovate across systems. So that points again to the cross-system collaboration need. You need a way to engage parents and other stakeholders and to set those high common aspirations. And last but not least, you need a flexible portfolio of high-quality options that offer what some people refer to as the new 3 R's of rigor, relevance, relationships, and a future focus on post-secondary credentialing. So in a place like Westchester, where there are a lot, I imagine, as is true across 75% of the school districts in this country, there are a lot of single high school districts. So this is a model that has developed in larger cities with multiple high schools. So it's going to take the creative minds of Westchester County to think about how can you offer these options even in those settings where school districts don't have so many high schools present, where you could distribute the options across the different school buildings. You may have to do multiple options inside a school building. You may have to think about more so-called community-based schools or CBO schools. Just down the road, in a large city to your south, they've come up with a design. Their multiple pathways design involves 4 different aspects. Transfer schools, they recognize this huge overage, undercredited population, and they wanted to create a band of schools that is just for those young people, rapid credit accumulation. Young adult borough centers is a community-based option for completing GEDs. There are other GED options, and learning to work is actually, it's not a separate band, it infuses all of the other multiple pathway options so that young people are getting work experience along the way. So how can municipal and other leaders play a role even if they don't administer the schools locally, which is, again, the case in most places? Well, in our close look at what cities have been doing and where the progress has come, we've seen several roles that mirror the roles that leaders can take in cross-system collaboration. So of course there's using the bully pulpit. Now that can be used for different purposes. Sometimes it's to start a conversation and to say, look, we have a way higher dropout rate than we should have in our city. But sometimes the bully pulpit can also be a way to engage the public, to name high expectations. So you may not want to focus on the negative, you may not want to focus on the current high dropout rates, but you may want to go to saying, let's set the expectation that all young people are going to move through, get a high school level credential, and then move on to post-secondary. Another positive way that leaders can get engaged is to highlight school and student success and to say, this school is doing it well, let's do more of this. These students are progressing, let's help more students get on this success pathway. Again, municipal leaders can play this convening role with school, college, and university leaders to build the connections and alignment across the education pipeline. There are sometimes city policies that can help expand alternatives. So, for instance, if you need to establish a CBO school in a given neighborhood, you may have to go through zoning procedure. The city may control buildings that it can deploy for that purpose. So that would be a partnership between the city and the school district in that case. The city, depending on the size of the city or the county, whoever is responsible for human services in the area, but the leaders can promote and ensure that there are resources for wraparound services for the young people in these multiple pathway options. So I'm ready now to just, I'm almost done, I promise, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what I think are some of the options that are open for those of you here in Westchester. Now that you've grabbed onto the issue, again, through the great data work, through your presence today, and what I'm sure will be some great responses and questions. There's probably still more work to do to get a sharper picture of the disconnected youth population locally, and for instance, if we know that we're getting close to knowing the total number, but of that total number, how many are kind of co-involved in the various public systems. It may be wise to conduct a resource and gap analysis and say who's already trying to re-engage and who's succeeding at re-engaging disconnected youth. Where are the gaps? Is the gap in services for young people coming out of juvenile justice? Is the gap in alternatives for dropouts? And that helps you say what you want to put your emphasis on, of course. Then there's a wide range of steps that you can take to further inform and engage your leaders. Again, it's great to have a great sprinkling of elected officials in the audience today. There are probably other people you want to get to, leaders of the various public care systems. So how about formally presenting the information and your plan, the plan you may develop, to those people? How about asking your local mayors to sign on to the Mayor's Action Challenge? I'll talk about that in a minute, where you can literally suggest some concrete local goals that you think your municipality can pursue. Can you create a platform for the mayor or other elected officials to speak out on the need to re-engage disconnected youth? Would you consider presenting your findings to your assembly delegation so that they can understand how state programs and initiatives play into your sense of how to re-engage disconnected youth? And last but not least, it can often be really valuable to identify one common starter project that you're going to work on together, whether it's a dropout recovery initiative or something for transitioning foster youth, whatever it may be, that brings systems together and shows the power of that collaboration. And then, last but not least, there's a way to, a step for you. We've got a great turnout of adults in this room. Are young people getting engaged in this conversation about, disconnected young people getting engaged in this conversation about what they need? Broader members of the public, are they being asked how they can, how they see this and how they can contribute? So we've seen a number of cities build out this citywide analysis and plan, which in your case it might make most sense to do that on a countywide basis. In Boston, they established the Youth Transitions Task Force, which is staffed by the local private industry council. They issued a report on this describing the scope of the disconnected youth issue called Too Big to Be Seen. They used that to go to Springfield and work on state legislation for dropout recovery. That report also detailed what they saw as the social and fiscal consequences of disconnection in Boston. In Philadelphia, before they launched the Project U-Turn initiative, which is about dropping the dropout rate by half, they issued this report called on Unfulfilled Promise. How many young people were falling by the wayside in Philadelphia, and really kind of creating a sense of what was being lost along the way. They've, through a combination of external advocacy and wise decisions inside the school district in Philadelphia, they've established their own office to guide a multiple pathways process and strategy, and they've recompeted the provision of alternative schooling in the school district. So all of that is a result of this Project U-Turn effort. Those are the benefits we see from getting a plan down on paper and then working the plan. I mentioned the Mayor's Action Challenge. This is an initiative we have staffed since the time of the 2008 election, brought to us by mayors around the country. Again, this is a way, it's both a method for public accountability for elected officials, to say, we want to achieve these things and we're willing to have these goals stated publicly on the web, but also it's a chance for advocates to go to their local elected officials and say, Mayor X or Y, would you consider naming some goals that relate to disconnected youth? So the sign-on process is easy. We have a few sign-ons already of mayors in New York State who have named goals, and we'd welcome more signatories from Westchester. So a lot of information. Hope it helps frame the disconnected youth issue, give you a sense of how other cities are progressing, recommend some advocacy steps, and now it's time to hear from the excellent local responders.